Welcome to Roleplay Roundtable, a place for you to come and discover some of the new projects that you may have missed, and a place to get yourself learning some conversations on things you may want to have at your table. We are very excited to be starting this week for our first episode of Roleplay Roundtable, and my name is Zach.
I'm
Happy
Drake
to be here.
Lionheart.
My co-host Drake, and we are joined by the absolutely wonderful Moe Poplar of Ashy Feet. Mo, thanks for joining us again. It's been a long time since we've talked, and I'm super excited to have you on to talk about your upcoming deck builder, Dark Heists.
Thank you so much for having me, Zach. I as we said pre-roll, I love chatting with you. I miss hearing you talking to creators about games. I'm so glad you're back.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah. And hey, Lion.
Hi.
Welcome to the party.
That's okay. Look, I'm very excited to be here and be able to sit down. And also to just be able to sort of gently nudge Zach back into this space.
It's going to be a new experience for me, folks, because I've never really done this with the co-host. I think one of my last episodes, though, I did interview 8 people at the same time, which was nuts. So that was a lot of fun, but we're gonna be a little bit more organized now.
A lot going on there.
Yeah.
Mo, before we really hop into it, though, could you please give the audience a little bit about yourself, what you're doing in the space?
Sure. My name is Moe Poplar. I can proudly say I'm a game designer. I think I first spoke to Zach about my RPG that I came out with back in 2020 called Shibuya Nights. And Shibuya Nights was an action anime RPG based very much on the Blades in the Dark system. And so instead of going and stealing and killing and pimping and dealing, you were doing mischief. And it was very family friendly. You know, I had this awesome beautiful Blades in the Dark book laying around in my house. And I have a kid who likes to read. And it occurred to me one day, if he picked up that book, I'd have a lot of questions to answer. So I was like, I think I see a space in the market. Yeah, it's much more family friendly, much more mischief, much less crime. I'm a big fan of the Forge in the Dark space. A couple of years later, I came out with Hold Fast Station with my design partner, Michael Lowe, which is about, deep feeling stories out on a space asteroid. Nobody's a hero, but your home needs to be saved. And I feel like, I've kind of at this point got back to the Blades in the Dark of it all. And with Dark Heists, because one of the things I love about Blades in the Dark is that it lets you play that that Thieves Guild game that never seemed to work in D&D, because after a while you're just incentivized. You got to go kill a dragon if you want to level up,
Absolutely.
So it occurred to me that as I was trying to figure out something else, it wasn't a different game. It wasn't working. And I was like, this absolutely does work for Blades in the Dark, though. So, I called some people at Evil Hat. They said they absolutely would not publish this. But, but they were like, you have our blessing. Go and, be creative. A while later, they played the game. Fred and Sean really liked it, and were very mean to each other, backstabbing and stealing and being very creative doing crimes. And at that point, I realized maybe I got a good game on my hands.
I love that. So we've talked a little bit about what Dark Heists is in lore, and it's not a role-playing game like a lot of people would expect from the first episode of Roleplay Roundtable. It's a little bit different. It's a deck builder. Mm-hmm. So how'd you come onto that?
Well, it is very story driven. So, I love RPGs. And when I start putting my toe in the water of board games, the things that really appealed to me were, games where, theme was very heavy. And when you were doing something, when you're moving a piece on the board, it had real narrative thrust to it. as opposed to, hey, go here and get points, go there and get points, go here and get points.
Yeah.
That, that it feels almost empty to me. And so with Dark Heist, it is a deck builder game. Some people don't know what that is. What you're doing is you're starting with a handful of cards. Everybody starts with the same 10 cards, and then you recruit people from in this game, the streets, to
Love
be
that.
in your gang, and you're essentially building your crew. You're building your gang, and that is one way you can get notoriety in this game. The person with the most notoriety wins. So each scoundrel you recruit can give you one, or if they're very powerful, they can get you 2 notoriety. But the way you get real notoriety is doing heists. And so I leaned into kind of really, it. So I'm not allowed to use Duskwall for this project.
Yeah.
Right.
So I really leaned into kind of a spooky Victorian vibe that might also like kind of still give you, Blades feels, but it's just a little more also accessible to anybody who didn't read the whole book of Blades in the Dark. So like that part was cool. So one of the heists is you can go and loot a funeral procession.
Oh.
Fantastic.
And so,
I love
like,
that.
it's very much bad people doing bad things, which is
Yeah.
the kind of the thing that I liked about Blades. One of the starter heists is the honeypot. Where the first challenge is you go find somebody who would make good eye candy, and then the second challenge is you lure the mark, and then the third challenge is you loot them for all their cash. And I really like how narratively driven the heist can be. One of them is a resurrection. So the client has hired somebody to resurrect them in case of emergency. And so you have to go dig up the body. And then you got to go make a deal with the witch. And then you have to like cast the spell. And then you have to like convince the client to pay you. So like just really evocative storytelling prompts around what the challenges are around the heist. The game works out that you end up drawing 5 cards for each stage of the heist, and I really imagined it like Ocean's 11. And so the 5 cards you draw, maybe the priestess, the sea hag, the huckster, and the thief. I think that's 4. But who else might be you might also get the medium.
Yeah.
These cards would come together and almost play like out of scene, like Ocean's 11. And then for each challenge on the heist, you're going to then discard that hand and blind draw from your deck to see if you can achieve the next challenge. Each card is able to do crime or sway. So I really like this idea that you have choice in how you're going to play each card, play each character in your hand. And so you can either use them to be persuasive to do it the easy way, or criminal to do it the hard way. And you can use sway to recruit people into your gang. And what do you use crime for? Well, you use crime to get money. So
Yep, that's Gens.
right. So you use crime to get money, and as you get money, you can use money to power other cards. You can use money to get rid of cards. Money makes everything easier.
Again,
fucking
that's
truth.
Gens.
It's a very narratively driven game. I've definitely had some people look at the game and look at me askance and say, "What are you saying with this?" And I say, this is a lighthearted, stab your friends in the back kind of game to play at a table. And it's literally just a game. There's nothing political about it. You can recruit nobles. You can recruit petty thieves, you can recruit monsters into your gang, and you can recruit crooked cops. And somebody was like, "Well, why are the cops crooked?" And I'm like, "Look, man, it's a
It's
it's a
the story.
milieu.
It's
It's
Yeah.
thematic.
Yeah.
If
in
you
the story,
Yeah.
in this fictional world, everybody is crooked and on the
Uh-huh.
take,
it's
and
kind of the point, right?
Yeah.
like
You yeah.
it's meant to be fun. And if we can't have fun, well, what can we do? So, there are no werewolves or vampires in real life. What makes you think crooked cops are real either? So, why are you guys laughing? Whenever I say make that statement, people laugh.
It's a thinker. It's a thinker.
Some people just like aren't like willing to say it, and every single time it's like, yeah, like
Mhm.
tells it how's it is.
like listen, it's good fun you can have around a table. And
Yeah.
part of it is you're playing against the game, so the game is antagonizing everybody. But also, if somebody's getting ahead of you, you can always steal coins, you can inflict heat or
Mm.
ghost on them and haunt them. And in the mechanics of the game, you're just filling their deck full of bad stuff to ruin their opportunities to succeed.
So you
Mhm.
mentioned heat. What is heat exactly, like in the
So
context
in
of the
this game, heat is a card. Um, this is a point of contention because all of the cards are scoundrels, but
Yeah.
one of the cards is heat.
Hmm.
The narrative might kind of come apart a little bit there. And so you're trying to get the most notoriety by the end of the game. And every heat card in your hand at the end of the game is going to be -2 notoriety. Every heat that comes up in your hand is going to be -1 to whatever you're trying to do. So if you're trying to recruit people, it's going to be -1 sway. If you're trying to do crime and get money, it's going to be -1 crime. And so every time heat comes up in your hand, and people could give you a lot of heat, the game sometimes just gives you heat, you know. And so every time heat comes up in your hand, it's generally a bad thing, unless, of course, you're building a particular type of deck with brutal cards. There's a certain suit in the game. There's 5 suits in the game, and one of them are the brutal people. And so they're just a little more hardcore than anybody else. They like heat. And they actually, when a heat card comes up in a brutal card with a brutal card, sometimes you get to draw extra cards. Sometimes you get more powerful. Sometimes, you get these cool combos. And so what that means is, as the game and other players are, burdening you with heat, you can kind of pivot and use that to your benefit if everything works out.
So, you mentioned the different like suits,
Yeah.
and I've played a lot of deck builders in my life because I'm very fond of the like board game archetype. I
Yay.
think it's really cool. And one thing I noticed is that some board games, some deck builders rather, really like to have you lean into building into like one archetype as you go, and others are like you want to kind of spread, you want to mix and match a little bit. With the suits, I know you mentioned like with the brutals, they want you to have heat. How much do you expect or intend for players to lean into playing one suit versus playing multiple suits and finding like combinations?
Excellent question. I tell people whenever I'm doing the teach, if you feel a little overwhelmed by all the cards and all the symbols, feel free to recruit cards that have pictures you like,
Love that.
because there's a dog in it that people like. There's a mongoose that people like.
Love the mongoose.
There are lots of cool noble characters that people like. Sometimes people are deep into the monsters, or just stick to one suit. And what I promise you is, if you just recruit one suit, if you just go after the ghosts, your deck will be very good. Now, I promise you, that's not the best deck you can build,
Sure.
because it's kind of like eating steak. You can cook a steak and have a plate full of steak, but that meal is going to be a little more balanced if you add some other flavors to it. And so I often say that, playing Dark Heist, I like to cook, so this cooking
Same.
metaphor enters a lot of the things I do, from game design to
So here for it.
everything else. But you know, you want to add like a little pinch of this and a little pinch of that to truly have kind of a deck that really works. And part of the challenge is you're limited by what's actually coming out into the streets,
Mhm.
you know. And so you have this deck of 60 different scoundrels um, from the 5 different suits. And, you know, typically, you know, a 4-player game, you're only going to see 25 or 30 of them. So, you know, you may not get the cards you want to make the deck you want. And it, you know, just kind of like a crime story, sometimes you got to go into the heist with the crew you can get, you know. So um there's definitely a you're not going to be able to go into this game and say, I'm going to do a thing, because the game, you know, has a lot of variety to it, which adds to replayability, but you know, it also adds to surprise. It also adds to, you know, making you have to be spontaneous, um, which I think suits the crime theme.
Mhm. So we've talked a little bit about the suits. 5 of them, I believe. Those are cops, crooked, brutal, ghosts, and
Noble.
nobles.
That's right. That's right.
We know that brutals like heat,
Yeah.
but are there certain things? Are there certain things that other cards particularly like?
So one of the every player starts with a specter in their hand, and if the specter comes up with this other card that you start off with, it's good. And if the specter comes up with it by themselves, it's bad. If you end up building a ghost deck, you might want to go get even more specters, because you know, all of a sudden these specters are really kind of working for the thing you got going on. Nobles get lots of coins, which felt thematically appropriate.
Yep.
The crooked get to draw lots of extra cards, and the cops have lots of very effective attacks, which I thought was very and they synergize together very well. And Lion, you asked a question about heat. So heat is a card. It's usually to your detriment, but heat is also part of the cop suit. So
That makes sense.
That makes a lot
if
of
you're
sense. Yeah.
synergizing with cops, suddenly heat, sometimes you can ignore heat. Sometimes heat works out to your benefit, you know, because, well, who controls the heat? And
Right.
that just seemed to, you know, I was in the middle of a play test number like 125, and somebody said, you know, and I said, oh, that's brilliant, sir. I'm going to go write that down. So it's a thing.
I love that. That's so smart. That's so good.
We keep on mentioning the playtests, and you've done a lot of these.
Yeah,
And
more than 200. Yeah.
yeah, it's incredible what goes into playtesting and finding these things. And even like, I know that I have personally been sent things you're working on before, and I love them, and I love how different they are when they come out. So like, what's the process there for playtesting?
Well, one of the things that you know, my kind of crazy, I just see these puzzles in the air, you know. It's my beautiful mind moment. My wife is often amused because I get that 100-yard stare while we're, you know, having a talk about bills, or we're having dinner, and she's like, oh, there he goes. So um you know, I feel like it starts with a certain level of pattern matching,
Mhm.
and it starts with like trying to get a rhythm of a thing going. In this case, you know, drawing the cards and playing the cards. And then after you kind of get something that's kind of working, um, oftentimes at that point you have a task. You know, you have something, you have an activity, but if you consider it, really, it almost feels like work, you know.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it becomes a question of, okay, so how do we make this fun, How do we add surprise? I think surprise is a really important, critical element
Mhm.
of games that
For sure.
in RPGs, you get it from the dice roll,
Yeah.
In RPGs, you get it from the fact that you have 5 people around the table bringing different elements of the story together, especially in indie RPGs, in D&D, the GM has gone and studied and prepped and map designed, and they're really hoping you don't take that left passage.
They
I
made
don't
that
know
left
that I
passage, and
needed
they
to
hope
get.
you don't want to go down it.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think I needed to get called out that hard, but yeah.
But in board games, you have other elements and triggers to just introduce these elements of fun and surprise. At one point, the mongoose was called a ferret because it's actually a picture of a ferret. And I was playing with my mother-in-law who lives on a Caribbean island, and she said, "You should make it a mongoose. Mongoose sounds more fun." And I slapped myself on the head. I said, "Mongoose sounds way more fun." You
Yeah.
know.
Absolutely.
Ferrets for the expansion.
I mean, but mongoose, dude.
Oh yeah, no
Mongoose.
mongoose. I agree.
Like
Yeah, mongoose is 10 out of 10.
ferrets are cool, but mongoose kills cobra.
Yeah,
So
100%.
like mongoose. Um, I someone sent me we'll talk about kind of how I did the art design for this game because I took a very unconventional route. I had my friends send me pictures. Um, so
Okay.
I didn't have any illustrations done. I have photos of people, and we just added a little filter to it. And if you look at my background, that's my friend Anne.
Oh, wow.
You look on my background, that's my friend Jason. That's Lauren, and yeah. So someone sent me a picture of a crocodile, and I was like, okay, so this is Victorian England. How am I going to fit a crocodile in here? Because this is an awesome picture, and you guys saw Snatch, where the guy had the pit full of pigs that he
Yep.
fed people to, and you're like, I'm just like, oh, I'm feeling this. I see the vibe, I'm feeling it, but it's a crocodile, and so I end up calling it a gloom beast,
I love that.
because there's this idea that these are not, these aren't the peers of Charles Darwin in Victorian England, that has genus and species all down pat.
Right.
They might see a monster, a real live 300-pound monster, a crocodile, and they're just gonna be like that. That's just spooky.
That's just a nightmare monster. I don't know what y'all are talking about, Jeanette.
Right.
That's a nightmare monster.
Right. So they call it the gloom beast, and it's like people see it and they're like, okay, I kind of get that. So just trying to go for fun. The only characters in the game that have names are the undead.
Oh,
Cool.
okay.
And so some people kind of pick up on that, and most people don't.
Mhm.
But like, if you're sitting there playing the game, you are creating this story, you're creating this narrative, and I want there to be some handles, some grips for you kind of to hold on to and build the lore around the game you're playing.
I kind of love the idea of it's almost like the inverse, right, of how undead are usually treated, where they're just like the tools. So I think that's a really cool concept, is like making
but
them
these
the
undead are criminal.
Yeah, right,
And they've been criminal for a long time,
Exactly.
And they are people of legend,
Love that so much.
So yeah, I didn't feel like Bloody Mary was appropriate, but every kid knows Bloody Mary, in the West.
Sure.
And so it's like,
Mhm.
yeah.
So, funding for Dark Heists
Funding
happened
for Dark
very
Heists.
quickly.
So fast.
Very fast.
I was very encouraged. I played the heck out of this game. I took it to a lot of conventions. I took it to lots of meetups. We have a very dynamic board game scene here in Los Angeles, where I live. Um, you know who has an amazing board game design scene? The Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area.
I've
They
heard.
have a proto spiel night like 4 or 5 nights a week.
Oh wow,
And
Oh, way.
I'm so jealous. Like
that's
low key,
amazing.
when I go visit my family and I'm in the Bay, they're like, "Hey, do you want to get dinner? Hey, do you want to go out for drinks?" And I'm like, I kind of got a thing."
It's
They're
a
like,
standing arrangement.
I thought you had a thing last night. Yeah, yeah. It's at a different place tonight. There's a whole new crowd of people meeting up to talk about, board game design and board games. And like, you just find yourself amongst such innovative and dynamic people. Um, and it is encouraging. It's inspiring. It really encourages you to step your game up. And here I am, you know. What that ends up meaning is when I show up to places like Dice Tower West, where I was last weekend,
Mhm.
when I show up to places like Big Bad Con, when I show up to places like Strategicon, the convention we have here in my town, I have a game that is just a little more polished than if I sat at home scratching my head thinking about, what could be better. People
Right.
Yeah.
have kind of looked at it. They've kind of given me the smell test already. And so, I built up an amazing list of people who were interested in it. I took it to places and people were really vibing with it. And, folks believe in the game. And,
Mhm.
I guess I didn't smell too bad when I was in the room myself, so they thought about supporting.
One of the things we want to bring up, because unfortunately, audience, here's a little peek behind the curtains. This is not being recorded when we want it to be recorded. So funding for Dark Heists, if it is not already closed, is closing very soon.
Sure.
But we have some good news for you. Mo, there's going to be some late backing.
Yeah.
How does that work? Do you know that yet? Or is that still in the process?
So if you go to my website, ashyfeet.com, and you click on the link, it will take you to I think Backer Kit, the
Mhm.
late backing situation. I have a feeling anybody who listens to a gaming podcast,
Probably
they
heard
kind of
Backer
know
Kit.
all this stuff.
Yeah.
But it'll take you to Backer Kit, and you'll be able to late back the project. Um, I will be ordering 300 sets of metal coins.
Oh,
And
dope.
so,
Very cool.
where things are now, if this podcast is a runaway hit, I will say uh, anybody who you may get caught up in the second reprint of the game if thousands and thousands of games are sold. So far, we're not there. So it's a strong promise. You'll get a copy of Dark Heist sometime this summer. Um, I have almost nailed down a way to distribute in Canada, although
Things are tricky right now, but
that's a great way to put it. Nobody in Canada
things are tricky right now.
wants to sign a distribution contract with me, but
Yeah.
I think I
Sure.
figured some ways around some things. So
Mhm.
yeah, but Canada funding shipping to Canada should be doable. I'm still trying to figure out how to ship to Europe. There's a certain point where if I was a big company, big companies would love to work with me, but
Mhm.
this is my first endeavor in the board game space.
Sure.
I've sold some games to publishers. None of
Mhm.
them are out yet, so I'm self-publishing this. And
Oh, nice.
yeah, as a
That's a
self-published,
lot.
it's a lot. And what it means is I got to figure it out. So I'm already shipping a couple copies to England, which is not the EU now. It's also complicated. And now there's somebody in Germany and Spain who really want to copy it. I'm trying to figure out how to not pay, $50 American per person
Sure.
to get
Yep.
each copy to them.
Mhm.
Because, in retail, the game is only going to cost $50.
Yeah.
If you are a late backer, you can get it for $45. Yeah, it's the whole thing. No AI was used in this game. I need to let
Heck
folks
yeah.
know. If you see that monster over my shoulder, my buddy Josh, again, I live in Los Angeles. My buddy Josh does horror effects, and Josh Russell effects, and he let me come to his studio and take pictures of lots of monsters that weren't copyrighted.
That's
because
awesome.
That's so
he's done
cool.
That's
he's done
so
some
much
work
cooler. Yeah.
on the Hellraiser films, and he's like,
Oh.
you can't take
Well,
pictures of that.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah,
That's so neat.
that'll get me a lawsuit. I don't need that. But he has lots of cadavers and monsters, and severed heads, and yeah. So
I know we're starting to run kind of short on time. So I do want to ask if people are interested in finding out more about you, Dark Heists, and what other projects it is that you're working on or plan to be working on. How would they go about doing that?
these days I'm pretty conversational on Instagram at ashyfeet.com. That's ASHYFEETDOTCOM. You can reach out to me via my website at ashyfeet.com. That's with a period and a com.
And we'll make sure we include the link in
Yeah,
the
Folks, these links will be in the
everywhere,
descriptions, wherever the descriptions are.
Yep.
And lots of people have been messaging me questions on Kickstarter, and I guess soon Backer Kit, and I'm also responsive there. So yeah, I'm really happy that a show like this is existing. And,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry it took this long to come back, but it's happening.
Well, we're here now.
We're back.
We're making it happen.
I'm very fond of shows that used to exist that talked about games with hosts that sound like Zach.
Me too. We're on the same wavelength.
And I'm super flattered that you're getting me in the chair.
I got some numbers to talk to you about after the show, but because found some stuff out with Drake here, and it's interesting. But folks, thank you so much for joining us here at Roleplay Roundtable. Mo, thank you so much for being the first one to join us here. It was great to have you.
We appreciate it so much.
Super flattered. Yeah, like you guys do a good show, and you love this stuff. It you could tell, and I can't wait to hear who else you interview.
And audience, thank you so much for listening and joining us here on Roleplay Roundtable. Ashfeet, Mo, Dark Heists, they're out there available. So go check it out. Go play some games, make some friends, have some fun. And I think we'll see you around.
Yeah.
Hopefully sooner rather than later.
And because I think I get yelled at if I don't say it now, remember, always play your games.
Oh, that's the one.
That is sadly profound.
Unfortunately.
Take care, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye.